Yes, stage is yours, Marcin.
Okay, you can hear me, right? Yes, I see my mic is on. Oh. Okay, so here is the plan for my today's talk. First, I will introduce myself. I will talk about my E2E experience at my current client, Softwear.nl. And the next topic will be test case prioritization. Then we will talk about Flaky test, and I will share some tips about how to speed up and in general isolate E2E, especially on the continuous integration. And at the end, it will be some links and QA session. Okay, so my name is Marcin Wosinek. I've been developing for the last 14 years. It's a lot of time. I started I started on the background on the backend, and about I think it was 10 years ago. I went to the to web, to JavaScript, and I was actually very positively surprised how the front end developed, how it matured. That already at that point it was possible to do serious development in JavaScript in a language that previously was considered like kind of like a toy. And people were already doing continuous integration, were doing unit test, and it felt much more like engineering than just what I remembered from before. Since 2014, I've been using Protractor, which is E2E tool that was developed by Angular team. Mostly, well, it's kind of like a addition to Selenium that was making Selenium work fine with Angular. And since 2 years ago, I'm slowly migrating to Cypress, a move I'm very happy with, because simply Cypress is a very good tool for doing end-to-end tests. So a lot of my experience with E2E is at my current customer. It's a software as a service company. So pretty much the whole offering of the company is the software that we are building. So as you can imagine, this is like a critical part of the whole business, and E2E is a tool that helps us to keep quality high. And I started over there about like 8 years ago. At the very beginning, we had just like we had few E2E tests that were, well, they were not only few and bad quality, but they were pretty much disabled because they were always failing. And yeah, that was that was far from the perfect situation. It was far from what we wanted to offer our customers. So pretty much, what was the impact of implementing more complete E2E solution for that client? Before, we were having releases every few months, which was pretty much like the release was such a big issue, or such a big problem. Like there were actually hundreds of customer calling with issues to the service desk after even good release, and that we were, in a way, we were scared of releasing, which is a big problem if your product is a software. you have multiple people working on that software, and then you are scared to release because it's always ending up badly. So thanks to improved quality, which was in big part helped with E2E. Right now we have mostly like around weekly releases, depending on the necessity. It's smooth. It's pretty much, our releases are going like yeah, we are still serious about it. We are not releasing on Friday evenings, for example. We are trying to find that time which is not going to which will minimize any issues in case of release going bad. But it's almost right now it's just like a precaution. We are trying to minimize the possible issues, but we hardly ever see any issues with releases. And one of the big changes, which is important for me as a developer, is that before improving quality with E2E, we were very careful, not only with releases, with any refactorings as well. So because the only testing was manual testing, and it was very often missing big issues. We were avoiding all but the most important, most necessary changes. So all the refactorings or library updates or whatnot was just delayed, and we were not doing it. So right now with having more than 500 tests in place, we are just updating libraries regularly, and well, if there are any issues, we are catching them before the regressions go to the production. So it's well, we have time to either fix it or revert changes depending on the situation. So what's my recommendations for prioritizing the E2E? Start with the easy stuff. So one of the things we have in the whole application, or especially in the newer part of the application, we have smoke tests. So in a sense, every single route or page that we have in our application, it's visited at least by one E2E. So on the very basic level, those E2E are just opening a website or opening a route and checking if the title is matching what we expect, or if the route is actually supported by the application, or if there is some action button that we expect to be there. And this is a nice approach to start adding your tests if you have big application that is already on production. You have a lot of routes that are not covered whatsoever by tests. Just by adding one test that will go to the website and to the route and see if it's if it's starting, if it's not exploding when you visit, at least you know that it's well, that all the libraries are being like that the page doesn't crash. In case of our setup, we are taking screenshots of every single website we are visiting. So we have some kind of like we are checking the whole application, and those tests are very simple to write. So in terms of return on investment, the simplest test, the test that you feel like that it's too simple to actually even bother, those tests are often well, in some situations, those are the only tests you have time to write. So it's still good to write them even if you would like to have much more. The next thing to cover is the happy flow of the critical user stories. So well, the most important thing, the thing that is bringing money to the company, this should work always. So it's important to double check it and have some automated check that is running all the time. Similarly, some of the edge cases in the critical user stories are more important than others. I imagine that, for example, in case of online stores, payment with card, well, card failing is pretty often pretty common situation. So it makes sense to cover this, well, not completely happy flow, but very important flow as well. And besides that, one of the things I was trying, well, I try to cover always are the regressions that went through all the checks and got to the production, because by error landing on the production, this is kind of like a proof that our manual testing or whatever processes we have in place are not sufficient. So it makes sense just to make some extra effort to make sure that those kind of situations will, well, that exactly the same bugs will not get into production twice. And in our case, we have the application we are building is related to retail, to shops. So there is this feature which is inventory, which is used pretty much once per year. So this is another example of feature that, like, well, it's important, but only for a very short period of time. So it makes sense to have some automated checks to make sure that well, the whole year when you are doing changes to the application, you are not piling up regressions in this one feature that is used very sporadically, and then to get an unpleasant surprise when the season of for that feature comes. So as I mentioned, our case is retail, our shops. Our main product is a point of sale system. So we have a lot of tests that are checking like the normal sales, some returns, discount, like the typical things that our customers are depending on, and pretty much the reason why they are paying the company. And a part of this main product, we have quite a few products that are kind of like support products. Let's say some dashboard for the owner of the shop. We have some internal application that is used for administrating all the customers we are supporting. So for those other applications, we are mostly covering the very basic flow, because in a way, any regressions in those applications is not exactly an emergency with a clock ticking and hundreds of customers getting angry. And well, even though we try to balance what is important and what is well covered, there is still, well, mostly because of historical reasons, some applications that are not the most important, that are having like excellent coverage, and the applications that are much more important, they have that the test coverage is slightly lacking. So this is something that in a way it's a sign of wasting resources, right? Because from the perspective on investing time on writing and maintaining tests, we haven't done a good job prioritizing in all the cases. Okay, so the next big topic I want to cover are flaky tests, which I like. Who has experience with, well, sorry, I was trying to check the chat, just got distracted. Okay, so coming back to flaky tests. There are three types of, like, this will be slightly theoretical part, especially touching on the probability theory. You guys have yeah, if you want, you can share in the chat what you remember from the school about probability theory. I will try not to be too heavy on the theory, but well, that's partially not possible to avoid. Anyway, there are three main reasons why tests will fail randomly. One thing that is the most annoying is just some issues with tests. The tests are not written correctly. Let's say there are some collisions between different tests running in parallel, some weights that should be there but were not implemented, and in general, tests, just quality issues with tests are causing tests to fail randomly. The other type of reasons for flakiness is tests that are issues in application only when you are using it at the unhumane speed of E2E engine. So, like, I don't know, something is not loading in the correct order, or your E2E is managing to click buttons before the whatever background process finished, something that no human could ever achieve. So this is again mostly issue with tests, but you could argue that, okay, like this kind of issues could happen well with particularly efficient users. So this is something that could be fixed on well, that you could argue that should be fixed in the application as well. And the last type is actually the thing that that E2E could be a very good tool to deal with: random issues in the app. So imagine that there is some bug that is happening, like, I don't know, once every 20 transactions. This is happening in application. It can be affecting your users, but as a developer, like, I'm blind to those kind of things, because whenever I'm changing the code, my application, the application I'm testing, it's sometimes working fine, sometimes crashing. I just don't pay attention to random issue, well, to random issues that are just happening occasionally. So for this kind of issues, E2E can be very efficient, very effective tool to catch if we are not having plenty of random failures that are just wasting our time. So of course, the third type is a type of failure that we are happy about, that we want to investigate, and we are actually hoping to catch. And those two first types are things that are creating a lot of noise, and there are quite a few issues with tests that are not stable enough. First of all, they are annoying to everybody involved, and they are unstable tests are undermining trust, well, of developers, of QA people, of everybody in our E2E solution, in our continuous integration. Besides that, it's, well, very often the solution for flaky tests is just rerun everything until they are passing, which is just slowing everything down. And because we are rerunning so many tests, it can be that we are, well, wasting CI minutes or whatever, or just blocking the build pipeline, and therefore we are wasting some resources. So the probability theory part, it can be sometimes counterintuitive. Well, here is preparation, and here we have a formula for what's the probability of our suite failing randomly, given a probability of one test failing. So this is something I've observed as soon as we got from like 20 to 30 to 100 tests, that the things that were acceptable before are just piling up and causing, when we have more tests, those flaky tests that tends to fail like once every 10 runs or once every 20 runs, those things were becoming more and more annoying, and pretty much like I was expecting the E2E to improve with time, but as we were adding more and more tests, it was becoming more and more less and less stable. And the reason is this formula, because for the suite to pass, you need every single test to pass. And if you have just a handful of tests and some of them are failing randomly at some rate, this is well, there is the probability that one of them will fail is not that big. But when you have 100 or 200 or 500 of those tests, and you still only need one to fail, this is getting out of hands very quickly. So this is something I calculated here. So the probability of our tests finding a bug where there is none, depending on the probability of one test failing. So this is a test that fails once per every 10 runs, once per every 100,000 and 10,000 runs. So and here is the number of tests that we have in our suite. So when we have only five tests, this 1 to 10 rate failure rate, it means that pretty much half of the runs it will be failing, and at 25 tests this is pretty much unusable. Well, even at 5 tests, I would say that it's unusable, because you have is almost like a coin flip for the suite to pass or to fail. and even once per 100 runs, if you have 100 tests, and this is hardly usable. And pretty much, if you are aiming to have 500 tests, which is well, it's a lot, but I got to that position, so it's not after 8 years. It's doable, right? If you are very serious, if you are serious about writing E2E, at some point you will have hundreds of tests. So for 500 of tests, even if your tests are failing, even every single of those tests is failing once per every 1,000 runs, and this means that it's pretty unstable suite. So well, I'm spending so much time on this point because it feels very counterintuitive and a little bit exaggerated to aim for such a high quality. But well, if you have many tests, in a way it's a necessity, because otherwise you will just write plenty of tests, then to ignore their results, because you will just rerun everything whenever it fails. So as we already said, random noise is overshadowing random bugs. So my suggestion is to investigate all random failures, especially if you start seeing some tests to fail very often, and aim for very high quality, such as test failing randomly only once per 1,000 runs, or once or per 10,000 runs, which is well, pretty much almost, I don't know, probably once a year test could fail randomly, and not to call your attention. Okay, so the next point is speeding up E2E inside continuous integration. So whatever is your continuous integration setup, it's pretty much very likely that that E2E will be becoming a big part of your of the time your pipeline is building, that it will be big and ever growing, because as your application is as you develop your application, you add more and more features. Hopefully you are adding E2E, so then there will be more and more time needed for this job to run. It's very likely that this job is at the critical path, because it's after you build your application, and hopefully before you deploy it wherever you are deploying it. So this is very often very likely affecting the whole continuous integration experience you have. And at some point you will have to optimize it, or you will have to try to make it faster to keep below well, to keep your CI build time under control. With E2E, in general, with continuous integration, my observation was that pretty much 30 minutes is a threshold which I find acceptable. When my complete CI time were going over 30 or 35 minutes, the experience, the developer experience was falling down. It was really hard to pay attention to keep track of all the jobs that are happening. So well, that's the The main tool that you can use for optimizing the speed of E2E at CI is just running your tests in parallel. For a long time, we've been running the tests at the very same agent, at the same machine. So it was just one job inside continuous integration that was starting many, in that case, protractor threads that were just running tests against the same backend, against the same database. So of course, when we switched the setup to this, when we switched the configuration to this setup, there were a lot of tests between different files that were colliding. So the things were just well, out of nowhere, we had a lot of flakiness in our tests because the same users were modified by different tests at the same time. So some tests were failing randomly. To work around it, we moved to something that I've been calling ad hoc data, because at the start of each test file, there is random data injected, in our case directly to the database. It would probably make more sense to use the backend endpoints to just create the data that you will be using during the test. And in this way, you can keep on using only one backend, one database, and avoid any data collision between different tests that are being run. And the biggest advantage of this approach is that you have only one startup of the, well, in case of just to run E2E, you need to initialize the job, start the backend, start the database, start a lot of stuff. And in our case, it takes up to 7 minutes at GitLab. So this 7 minutes, well, in this original setup, we were just spending that time once, and then all the tests were running from the same job. And the other approach that we migrated recently is actually we split many E2E into well, our system is divided into applications. So those applications that were having different sets of E2E. So this was kind of like a natural way of dividing how to split the E2E into different jobs. Just every application got separate job to run E2E. I was very reluctant with this approach because it just feels wasteful. But in the end, it was very good idea because we just the UI is much clearer to follow. It's easier to it was easier to set up. This whole ad hoc user creation is actually not necessary. And as an upside, we just got we were able to move to the GitLab Cloud agents, something that is much easier to set up than what we were using before. And the UI that we have in CI is much more straightforward and easier to read. So the last big topic I have to cover is isolated E2E setup. So pretty much what we have, we run everything inside Docker containers. So we have test databases are run as a container. The backend, we actually, our backend is deployed as a container. So we have we already have a container built as a for deploying. So the same container we can use inside tests. And for front end, in our case, we are deploying front end as a flat files. And I can imagine that depending on your deployment setup, you could be creating Docker images as well for deployment. So this is one or the other approach. And luckily, inside GitLab for CI, you can include different containers as services that are made available for when you are running your jobs. So this means that, for example, backend and databases, everything is started, let's say, kind of natively by GitLab. And so this is for the systems that we have control over. And then for systems that we are not able to control, for example, some external services, some that we are communicating either directly or via some proxy that is developed by our backend. Those things you have to isolate it. Well, you can just mock the requests that are going to those services and just assume some kind of return values. And in our case, we have some very old part of application that is pretty much impossible to move to Docker. So this part of our setup we are kind of treating as a third party as well, because there is no way that of us to make it nicely available inside the container. Summarizing how we are running E2E at Softwear now. We are using this ad hoc accounts for better isolation, as we've been doing, as we've been running everything, running tests in parallel on one job, and then we moved to running many jobs with the same tests. That transition was very very smooth. And we still managed to keep the CI pipeline total time below 30 minutes, which is in a way a necessity to keep us productive. And everything that I've talked here, I discussed at my blog. So here are some links that you can follow up to read if you are interested in slightly more in-depth discussion of those topics. We will share those slides after the meeting. At the event. And now some questions.
Marcin, thank you very much. Do you have any questions? So I think I have one question. Actually, time we spend on writing tests is really big time, of course, but what about maintenance? This is another topic, and sometimes we need to spend a lot of time on maintenance. What are your advices on this? How we can optimize this time from the very
You mean optimizing, like maintenance of the tests themselves, right?
Yes, yes, yes. For example, the feature is changing or something. We develop something else. How we can optimize this and in the team.
I'm not sure if I have any smart answer to that. Definitely. Well, what I see when you have good quality tests, then they are just easier to update when you are changing the feature as well. If the tests, the worst tests we are having, we have developed, they are causing a lot of maintenance issue because of flakiness, and sometimes dealing with, sometimes troubleshooting test, it takes hours because it just I don't know, because of the randomness of the whole issue. So I think there is a lot of requirement for, you writing tests, or in general having a high quality product is expensive, and I think it's I think this is I haven't found a perfect solution for easy maintenance. And if you remove a feature, you will remove tests, right?
Yeah, of course, but probably we don't need to write a lot of tests, and we don't need to spend a lot of time on maintenance. Maybe we need to find a balance between how many tests we are writing and how many tests we need to maintenance. Then, if we write, for example, I don't know, 1,000, so it will take a lot of time.
Yeah, I think this comes back a little bit to prioritization, because I'm by default, I'm sometimes I have to, let's say, force myself to write tests. So when I feel very lazy, I just try to write the test that is just visiting the page, nothing else, and then covering the most important part of the workflow or of the route. It makes sense, because I've seen some tests that were kind of, I don't know, some weird ideas of just like, I don't know, if there is like 20 buttons which are doing the same thing, some colleague decided to just write a loop that was clicking every single button and seeing if it's actually doing the same thing as it should. It felt redundant. It was not stable, and it was causing some maintenance issues. So this is the same, like here with tests is the same thing, like with code, like with features. Everything that you write, you will have to maintain. So I think having plenty of tests sounds cool on a presentation, but I wouldn't go very blindly, and I wouldn't aim for producing as many tests as possible. It should be, the test should make sense.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So there is another question. Are you using NX workspace in your Angular project, and are you using state management?
No, we don't use in this project. We don't use NX workspace. The project I'm working, like with this client, most of the application is written with Angular, with AngularJS, with the old Angular, and we have custom Webpack build, because we already started migrating to, partially migrating to newer Angular, so everything is custom, let's say. And And for state management, we don't use anything special. Well, we just use services and REST API. So this is how we get state and how we manage data inside the application.
Okay. Hi. When you say create good tests, what exactly is good test case? I'm beginner, so any pointers will help.
So for a beginner, I would start actually even as a beginner, just like trying out, just writing very basic test. You go to you visit a route, and you expect that there is like a submit button or whatever your app is doing. And this test one already will require navigating through your application. You will have to start your test tool. You will learn a little bit of how to run it. If you want to go step further and integrate it on your continuous integration, that will be already a lot. And just without going into complicated details, just by checking that your app, your JavaScript app doesn't crash, it's a lot. And then to actually cover something, let's say, more meaningful, you can check the most important workflows you have in the application. So in case of point of sale or online store, it will be just customer enters the store, picks one product, pays, and nothing crash. So those are good place to start. And especially if if the project we are working on doesn't have any tests, those places will be very valuable from the stability of the whole product as well, right? So I would start simple.
Okay, great. I think we need to cover the main functionality first, main users pass, and then just go deeper if you need. So yeah, the next question, the big question actually. Who is involved in creating test cases for the end-to-end test suite? Are they written in given when then format, Cucumber Gherkin, or in pure Cypress? This is the first question.
Yeah, like for this first question, I think it depends on your organization. And in my organization, pretty much it's is the developer who is writing a feature decides what should be covered. We used to have some people dedicated to QA, but they were always more focused on manual testing than on test automatization. And E2E was always effort mostly on the development side. And then this Cucumber format, I pretty much never learned it. I've heard people are using it, but like I've never worked in an organization with so many levels of separation that it was necessary. I never had somebody writing test case for me, or people consuming and people consuming the failure report, it was always developers. So that's well, I never had to go more fancy with that.
All right. What test structure do you use for the tests to be agnostic to the implementation and to avoid duplicates at such a scale, hundreds of tests?
Yeah, that's a good question, because actually, yeah, I was about to say that we have no structure, but no, we do have structure. We have all our tests are isolated based on routes, and most of our features are focused in one route. So yeah, so we are kind of with our E2E, we are matching the structure of the application. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do you have any more questions? Thank you, Kate said. Yes, I think that's it. Thank you very much, Marcin. It was really interesting talk. This recording will be available soon, and I think we will be sharing the feedback form from you with all the participants. Please just it will be shared in our community and meetup. Please fill out this form for Marcin, so for him to improve further. Thank you very much, and have a great evening, and see you in next sessions.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And just to share with you guys, I have well, if you are interested in more stuff I'm sharing, there is this blog I'm writing. I have some newsletter that I'm well, mostly sharing my articles, and the link tree. So yeah, I will share the slides after the meeting, and thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Ciao.